Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. All right, so welcome to the laundry room. Somebody was using all three of the machines by himself. Not very happy about that, so I figured I'd try to waste some time, talk a little basketball. I had an idea last night. I woke up at like 3 in the morning and started thinking about all these basketball teams and stuff like that. Went through the whole Eastern Conference in my head. It should have been a video, basically. It was me doing a video without the camera, without actually saying anything out loud, but figured I'd try to simulate some of those thoughts into this particular bit of content. So, the Eastern Conference is a team is a conference that's pretty interesting to me, um, because you got the two top teams, Cleveland and Boston, and then you got a bunch of other teams underneath who are either fighting to win and try to get the most out of themselves, which is very few of those, or teams at the bottom that would rather fall out so they can have the best opportunity at their pick. Now, the thing that makes me curious about the Eastern Conference right now is there any chance at all you see any upset whatsoever in that conference? That's what I was trying to figure out. Based on what it is that we're looking at right now, is there any chance that anybody would be able to upset somebody at the top or anything that could be interesting in that regard? I guess the matchup that looks interesting to me, if things stay as they currently are constructed, is Detroit and New York. Now, as many times as I've seen situations like this where you got new teams, kind of a smaller market than a bigger market, you got this big brand in New York, even though literally Pistons have won more championships than them, but that's not the point. You got this big market brand. Chances are they're probably going to win the series. The younger team being the team with the smaller market and stuff like that. I don't want to put this off on the refs, but like it kind of comes down to them just kind of favoring the bigger market team. Obviously, New York has home court advantage, so that's really a thing to me. But when I look at the Detroit Pistons, the one thing that's interesting to me about the Detroit Pistons is their depth right now. They have a lot of depth, and they're probably more likely to use that depth than the New York Knicks, of whom I think they're capped off underneath contender status for a few reasons. One of the reasons that I think they're capped off under contender status is the OG Anunoby contract that I just think was, although he's a nice piece, he eats up so much of the cap, he's not reliable to stay healthy. I truly believe with everything else that they had locked up, they could have taken that amount and diversified better and had more imagination with the picks that they traded for him. They could have gotten higher level talent to soup themselves up. I thought they got a little lazy when it came to him. Give him all this money, throw 3 picks at Toronto to get him, and just fill in the roster spot. I just thought they could have did so much more. They should have had so much more creativity, and because of it, I don't think they have enough to really do it on the basketball court, despite having all these contracts that look, like stars. You got Brunson, of course. You got Josh Hart playing like a star. You got Bridges, of course, Carl. So to me, it's like OG looks good on the floor. He plays well, but for what he's being paid and what you gave up to get him, you could have had another star. If you would have maneuvered that stuff correctly, you could have found an upswing guy who's going to turn into a star. You know what I mean? So I just thought they would lack the imagination. They capped themselves off. Another reason why I thought the New York Knicks were capped under championship status is their coach, Thibodeau. He's a good coach. He's a smart coach. But he's an egotistical guy that tends to believe that he can run players like machines and they're never going to run out of gas. I don't believe that has ever served him positively. And because he won't shake it, he won't. And we've mentioned this scenario a lot of times. He doesn't play his bench. A lot of times that bench needs minutes so that when they do need to play in the event of injury as he wears people down, they will have had the development necessary for them to contribute in the continuity with everybody else so they can slip in and play. He underdevelops these young guys on the bench and wears out the top guys. The top guys get hurt. He brings in those guys that he hasn't been playing, and all of a sudden they're not that great. This is the dynamic that you keep running into so long as his philosophy is to only play 7 guys 40 minutes a night. When you do run those 7 guys into the ground, you're playing a bunch of unplayed players. So I think his philosophy fails him every time, and I think he's too egomaniacal to change it. And so he caps his team also under championship status because his teams end up hurt at the end of the season. No matter how well they've played through the regular season, half of the people that he's relied upon are already out of gas or injured by the playoffs. And that's what I expect is going to happen again. So until he overcomes that and starts to believe that playing 9-man, 10-man, 11-man rotations throughout the course of the season is in his best interest, he ain't winning nothing. And so that's really what I believe. I just think that those two things specifically keep them under championship status. If they were to have better in those two areas, I think the New York Knicks could potentially be the best team in the Eastern Conference very soon. But they're not going to be, and I think that's why. And when I look at the Detroit Pistons, the thing that came to mind last night was this Piston team should have a lot of pride. Last year they were the worst team ever known to man, had one of the worst records we had ever seen through 50 games. And the same players that were on that team last year, more or less on this team this year, and they're 39-32 in 6th place, having beaten good teams on the way to this nice record. And you know, the players that they have, they didn't suck to begin with. And I think a lot of them at this point, having gone through that and made it through that, probably feel like they're mentally tough to be able to get through anything at this point. When you're able to endure such a horrible season, not crumble, come back together, and show that you can do this in just 16 months' time, more or less, you understand that you've earned something as it pertains to your pride and what you're wearing on your chest. They should feel like lifelong Pistons, these guys. Ausar Thompson, Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham, Isaiah Stewart, they should feel, Marcus Sasser, they should feel like we've endured something that a lot of guys would be demanding trades, a lot of guys would be getting the hell out of here, a lot of guys would have lost confidence, not being intentional on being Detroit Pistons. And we endured that, we can get through anything. I think that scenario could, in most situations, provide a mental toughness for a unit of young guys who are still discovering who they are. And then you couple that with the depth that they've added to themselves. One of the reasons why they were so bad is because they didn't have any spacing on the floor that year. They were, kept on drafting people that didn't stretch the floor and then wouldn't fill in any shooters. Well, they've fixed that problem. You got Tim Hardaway now. You added Malik Beasley, who's been great for them. You add Lindsey Waters, who's now in place. You add Tobias Harris, who's in this situation now. Simone Fontecchio's in this situation. All these guys should be able to hit threes. Dennis Schroeder's now in place to provide depth. So now what you see is a team that has some depth. Paul Reed is in place to provide some depth. You know what I mean? So it's like this is a team who has that going on for themselves. Then when you talk about a style, Ausar Thompson and Ron Holland are two-way freak athletes. They both can defend at the point of attack about as well as anybody. They both can get out in the fast break and explode with unreal speed. When you have those two wings and they're both pretty much the same age, 21, 22 years old, now you have something that can attack teams in ways that a lot of teams don't have. Ausar Thompson and Ron Holland are going to be fantastic defensively for the Pistons for years to come. You just got to keep them together. And then you add that monster in the paint, Jalen Duren, who's going to out-rebound people and be bigger and stronger than a lot of people and continue to grow. He's also very young, growing with them, freak athlete as well at the center position. Then you add Cade Cunningham, certified all-star, closer, first overall pick. It's turned into a real killer down the stretch of basketball games. So a heavy scorer, a connective piece, somebody who can rebound, a big body that's matched up well with other people. If you want to play at different positions, you can do so based on his size. They have a lot of things working in their favor, both on and off the court, more or less, as it pertains to the overall pride of this team. And although I think that my mind's eye and my experience paying attention to the NBA has told me the Knicks are still going to beat them. I think that's going to be a hell of a series. I think that's going to be a hell. If it holds up, I do think the New York Knicks probably win in 6 or 7, but those are going to be 7 hellacious games, and I wouldn't be surprised I would not be surprised if the Pistons won that series. I would not be surprised. So I just want to put that out there. I think the Pistons are the truth. I think they have a certain scenario about them, their circumstance that could create mental toughness in a lot of teams, and I do expect that they will perform. They will perform going forward. So that's what came to mind there. And I was thinking about the Indiana Pacers just a little bit. I haven't followed them as much this year, but I know they had that hellacious offense last year that got them to the Eastern Conference Finals. Of course, injuries kept them from being as competitive as they wanted to be down the stretch of that. I really don't know if I really love their ceiling at this point. They're in fourth place currently. I think they're kind of capped off where they're at. I don't know that they can get any better. I don't think they can win a championship or anything like that. Eastern Conference, I don't imagine that they're really good enough to win that. They're currently on a 4-game winning streak, but they've beaten some pretty easy teams in this situation. But ultimately, when it comes to the Pacers, I just think that they're just kind of capped off at playoff squad. I don't believe they're really a contender. I think their ceiling was probably where they were at last year. They're not the team you're trying to avoid in the Eastern Conference. You probably want to avoid everybody around them, per se. You probably rather play them than the Pistons, depending on who you are. And that's just what I see there. I think that at this point, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Miles Turner. Do they keep going forward with him, or do they try to turn him into something else as he starts to age and the rest of their timeline being interesting? Jarris Walker, are they ever going to develop that young guy? They drafted him high in the draft last year. He's not getting opportunities. Where's that going? Ben Matherin's kind of coming off the bench now. His ceiling's probably higher than what it is that they've played him up to be. It's just a lot of stuff going on there. They paid Pascal Siakam all this money. He's an all-star this year. Can you really win a championship with him being your best player? Tyrese Halliburton, is he your best player? Can the consistency ever come for Tyrese Halliburton? Can you win with this? I like the players they have. Naismith nice, Nembhard nice, Halliburton nice, Siakam nice, Turner nice, all of them nice. But do I like them together in a small market situation where I can't lure a star here or ultimately get a high-level draft pick to make it better? I just think they're capped off at playoff. They're capped off at playoff. And I think they're going to be that year in, year out. And maybe that's good enough for them in their situation. But I'd be lying if I said I'm afraid of them. I think that some of what they have make them a less than great defensive team. They can really score, and they have some good defensive players. But I don't expect that they're doing anything this year, not in the playoffs. And so that's just my opinion. I'm always open to being wrong. I've been wrong about a lot of things, but I don't see much for the Pacers this year. Milwaukee. Giannis brings you to a space where you always have a chance to do something special. But there's been a thing that's been going on for years and years and years with Milwaukee, and that is Giannis getting hurt in the playoffs. It's 2-3 years in a row it is? And you couple that with some of the pieces that they have, I think are okay. They're okay. I don't know, man. I think Giannis makes you different, but I'm not a big Dame Lillard fan in Milwaukee. I think, some of his weaknesses defensively are kind of exposed based on what it is that they have going on. Taurean Prince, as a Laker fan, we know him. He can shoot the ball well. He can do some good things, but he's a role player, kind of cool. Kuzma, in that situation, is okay, but can they get the most out of him? I don't think so. Brook Lopez getting older, but still going strong. Got to give him credit. But, coaching staff situation, Doc Rivers, you know how I feel about Doc. Darvin Ham, you know how I feel about Darvin. KPJ has some upside that I think could be star level. Does he stay in Milwaukee? I don't know if he's found a home there. Gary Trent, nice shooter, whatever. Defensive player, he cool sometimes. Nothing to cry home about. And that's really what it is. The sum of Milwaukee's pieces are nothing to cry home about. They're okay, but nothing super exciting. I'm more excited about the sum of what Detroit has, minus the stars, of course, which clearly Giannis is a bigger star. Dame is as well. But, I just think that the others on the Milwaukee Bucks just are okay. and it's going to be incumbent upon Dame and Giannis to play absolutely out of their mind this season. For them to do anything, coupled with Bobby Portis being suspended for a million years, I just Milwaukee is okay, just like Indy, Milwaukee's okay. So that's what I see there. There's some okay stuff going on there. Cleveland and Boston, obviously, they're the cream of the crop. I don't really need to break them down. Either one of these teams can win the championship. I said all year that I think Cleveland's better than Boston. I haven't wavered from that. I do believe that. But it doesn't mean that Boston can't beat them or that Boston can't have a better path and find themselves in the finals anyway. These are two contenders. And Cleveland's on a 4-game losing streak right now, so we got to see what the heck's going on with Cleveland going forward. But I felt like they've been better all year. Maybe they're taking their foot off the gas to try to stay healthy. I don't have a close eye on Cleveland right now, but they've been better all year, in my opinion, than pretty much everybody in the East and maybe everybody in the league, to be honest with you. So that's what I see there. Boston, I told you guys I don't believe in their center position, but they have a system that works. And some of these guys that I quote-unquote don't believe in have already run last year. So I'd say they didn't upgrade their center position, but if Al Horford can continue to be tried and true the way that he plays, he ups his game in the playoffs, they could be right back there. Porzingis got to be healthy. All those guys got to obviously health is for everybody as it pertains to your upside, what you can do. But whether I like it or not, and I think I'm a biased viewer of the Boston Celtics, they've already won. They've already proven that. So it is what it is. It's incumbent upon Cleveland and New York to try to beat them and prove what they've already proven. That's just what it is. Orlando, I don't think Orlando needs to do too much. I do think they've had an issue with their guard position. I did not agree with the Jalen Suggs signing. It's unfortunate he's been hurt all year. It kind of reinforced that I was right. They shouldn't have did that. But, he's played well enough before getting hurt to make you feel great about him. I think that, you don't move anything that they have as it pertains to Banchero and Franz. Hold on to those pieces. Tristan Da Silva is going to be good in the future. Anthony Black, I'm big on. Jet Howard's going to be a nice knockdown shooter. So a lot of that stuff is really good. I don't think I really do anything. I don't know if their ceiling is as high as they want it to be. But as long as you have Franz and Paolo, there's legitimate star power right there. And I think Anthony Black, once he starts stepping into his own, is going to also kind of be one of those guys in his own way. Severe defensive presence. So they just have a lot of young stuff. It's aligned with the right timeline. I don't know if it has championship ceiling, but I don't think it's going to stay where it is right now. They are 33 and 38. And, of course, in Eastern Conference, that allows you to be like 8th place. But as far as I can tell, they just need to keep that thing together. Maybe slide in players here and there, see what they need at the end of this season, make sure they have it next year as it pertains to the others. But as far as their stars and stuff like that, I think they got a good thing, and I think they should just continue to see it grow, just like Detroit. Miami is miserable, man. And Miami has a hard decision ahead because they always can psych themselves into believing that they're going to overachieve if they can just get a playoff spot. They've had bad seasons in the past and still found themselves in the Eastern Conference Finals and the finals. So that's the problem. When they look at a season like this, they're on like 11-game losing streak or something crazy like that. They can still say, well, we're in the play-in tournament. All we got to do is win these 2 games in the play-in tournament. Then we got an opportunity at upsetting somebody like Cleveland. But at this point with Jimmy out and the trade that they made for Jimmy left them kind of weak, in my opinion. It wasn't a great trade for Jimmy. Now I think they're just lacking in some talent, and their timeline looks a little Chicago bullish prior to trading away Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. Yeah, you got some guys on the team that could help. No, your team's not going anywhere if those guys are relying upon one another. And that's really the issue with the Miami Heat. You got Bam Adebayo, who's a really nice defensive center, been great at that. He can do a lot of great things. Is he somebody you can rely upon to lead you to a championship? No. Tyler Hero, nice scorer, really nice scorer. He can light it up. When he gets hot, he's a problem. Can I count on him and Bam Adebayo to lead me to a championship? No. You see what I'm saying? Khalil Ware is a young player. He's gonna be good. I like him. He can do a lot of things. But is he the 3rd best player? No. Jaime Jaquez, is he that guy that everybody thought he would be? He could be that guy going forward. He's still more development to go, but he's a 4-year rookie. I'm not counting on him to be enough to move me forward. So it's like Andrew Wiggins. Is he a guy like that? I mean, he can be. He's already won a championship with Golden State, but he's so inconsistent historically that you just expect more inconsistency. It's the sum of their parts. It's just, these are nice pieces. Now, I like Nikola Jovic. Davion Mitchell's there now. I like him. Terry Rozier, I made a joke last night. Terry Rozier went up there to retire. He went down to Miami to retire. He stopped playing as soon as he got there. He was good in Charlotte, good in Boston. He came to Miami and stopped being that guy. That's what it seems like to me from afar. They just don't have a whole lot of what they need to be really good. The trade that they made for Jimmy should have yielded them more. Obviously, that circumstance, ate away at his value. I understand that. But they settled for something that just made them mediocre. And at this point, they're on like I said, 10 or 11 game losing streak. I think that at this point you got to consider what it looks like to get out from under win now talent and reset your situation maybe in the draft. I know that's hard because these guys are people they've drafted. They like a lot of these people. Some of them are young guys. Tyler Hero is a young guy for the most part. Khalil Ware, of course, just got here. Jaime Jaquez, of course, just got here. But like Bam and Wiggins, I can see them being in a much better situation, surrounded by more talent with a higher ceiling. Problem is, if I go to trade Bam, am I really getting the stuff I need that can reset my situation? Am I going to be able to entice a team to give me like 4 picks for Bam? If I'm being honest with you, I don't think the answer is yes. If I move Tyler Hero, can I get like a reset worth of picks to make that actually the case? No, I'm probably not getting nothing there either as it pertains to enough to make it so that I can reset. So the stuff that they have from where I'm sitting is not reset worthy in the trade market. Now maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can get somebody to really give you a lot for Bam, but that's what it's going to be required. You're going to have somebody overpay for Bam. You're going to have somebody overpay for Tyler. They're not worth enough to reset your situation. And so what I think the Miami Heat actually really need is a big free agent signing. They need somebody to choose them. And given the fact that they have the Miami Heat, the Miami market is what I'm trying to say. I don't think they're in the worst position to be optimistic about that thought. They need somebody to choose them. And so if they can get somebody come down there, play for them, and they can slide that star next to these players, that would be the best case scenario in my opinion for the Miami Heat. Then they don't have to reset their situation, or they could turn around and trade that player for the picks necessary to get where they need to go. Otherwise, they're kind of stuck in no man's land unless they can find somebody who will overpay for their stuff. So they're in a terrible spot. But this is what I said about allowing Pat Riley to continue to run this team. He doesn't handle his assets very well. He tends to pay people the wrong amount. He tends to trade people away for less than what they're worth. And that type of stuff will eat away at you slowly but surely, and then you continue to rely upon your coach and his system to get you as far as you need to go, but you're not bringing in the talent that ultimately makes it so that they're valuable in the market for the reasons that we just described. So while they overachieve at times, they never actually have enough to do enough. But they had Jimmy at one point, so you could say, well, at any given time leading up to where we're at, you could have traded Jimmy for some of them picks. But you let it go as bad as it did to where his value went left. And so it really killed y'all. So that's what I think of the Miami Heat. They're just in a miserable spot. They're where Chicago used to be. The only thing they got going for them really is the fact they're in the easy East and that they do have a fantastic coach that can have that next man up system that ultimately everybody can eat in. But as I always say about him, how much better would he be if people didn't ruin his asset class? How many championships could Spoelstra have if people actually did right by his team? You talk about what's going on in OKC. Can you imagine if Miami ran themselves like OKC and Spoelstra's running the team? They'd have like 3 championships already. So that's just what it is. Their coach is why they're so capable of doing more. And at this point, I'm wondering why he would want to stay there going forward. That's the question I have there. He can find better opportunities himself than to stay in this 29-41 situation. It's just Miami is not very good anymore. That's just what it is. It wasn't that good when they were getting to the finals. I thought they weren't that good. To be honest with you, I thought they were overachieving like crazy because of him. So now they're really like they're in a bad spot. I would want I don't know if they have their own picks. If they have their own picks, I imagine they don't. But if they have their own picks, they need to start tanking. If they don't have their own picks, they need to get a free agent, or they need to find who has their picks and try to make a trade to get them picks back, just like Brooklyn did. That's exactly what Miami needs to do. Otherwise, they're in no man's land. Chicago looks pretty impressive right now after beating my Lakers. I have a different view on them after, kind of shaving away some of that stuff, like, some of the players that they had. We already mentioned, getting Zach LaVine off the books, getting DeMar DeRozan off the books. I thought those were good things for their team. Got themselves some younger talent. I still think they're in no man's land, to be honest with you, but their timeline at least makes a lot more sense at this point. Now you got Buzelis, who has upside. You saw what he did last night with my Lakers. Giddey, who's a younger guy, upside is there. Kobe White, all on the same timeline. Pat Williams' contract doesn't look as bad now that he has guys who are comparable in age next to him, growing with him. So, Dalen Terry starting to come along, show some signs of life. So you see them slowly but surely being able to have a upside type of view about their situation. It may not be where it needs to be for them to be so great, but you can continue to see where they're starting to improve upon their asset class. They don't have such horrible contracts on the books. If you have to reset 3 years down the road, Buzelis, White, Giddey, Pat should be worth more later than they are right now. And that's really what it's all about. Can we just improve our asset class by having upside stuff getting better in our uniform? And the answer right now, for the first time in about 6 years, is yes. The Bulls have that going on. So there's light at the end of the tunnel right now for the Bulls. And they should feel really encouraged by what they did against the Lakers. And just overall on this road trip, they've been pretty good on this West Coast road trip. So that's what I think of the Bulls. I like them better than I like the Heat right now. And I'll tell you that. That's for sure. Atlanta, I'm excited about Onyeka Okongwu stepping into himself right now. He really secretly had a fantastic season. I don't know if people would consider him for most improved player, but he has been a most improved kind of guy this year. He's been good. And now that they moved Clint Capella, well, Clint Capella hasn't been moved, but he's out of the way with an injury for the rest of the season. I don't know if he's going to resign or not. I wouldn't resign him, not for the timeline that Atlanta is currently on. They got the Hunter contract off of their books, which I thought was very important. It was kind of eating away with what they had going on. They got the Bogdanovich contract off of their books. Felt good about that. And they've been winning games in the process. As of right now, they're 34-36 on a little bit of a winning streak, having removed some talent for the sake of their books. I like it. Reece Shea is a nice piece. I don't know if he's somebody you take over Sarr today, but going forward, there's still a long way for them to prove themselves. I still like Reece Shea a lot as an off-ball scorer and defensive player with a lot of wire release strength going forward. We knew that draft wasn't amazing, so I thought Atlanta did just fine taking Reece Shea. We'll see what type of player he turns into. But Okongwu makes me excited about them because they needed him to play the way that he's playing right now, and he's stepping into his own. He looked like he's going to be an all-star going forward someday. Dyson Daniels was a major steal in the trade that they made with the Pelicans. Turned into one of the best defensive players in the game today. So you love that backcourt they have with him, Reece Shea going forward. Some of this other stuff on the back of their bench. George Niang's played well in the game. I'm looking at the highlights. He had like 23 points, 6 and 9 from the three. So, the role players are probably not going to be there for much longer. Caris LeVert, Terrence Mann, Victor Krejci, they're going to move these guys around. Of course, Jalen Johnson needs to be considered. He's out for the season right now, but he's also a stud. And of course, Trae Young's in place, of whom I think it's a very sensitive situation in saying, do you keep Trae Young on a massive contract, pay him his $300 million, whatever it's going to be, or do you move him, have some more imagination about your franchise, and continue to go forward with the timeline that you have with Okongwu and Daniels and Johnson and Risa Shea? My gut tells me that you probably, even in the event that you want to move forward, you probably would do better keeping a killer like Trae Young, who's aligned with the Atlanta market. It's hard to get good talent playing basketball in Atlanta. Atlanta has a long history of not being a very good franchise. If he wants to be there, he takes pride in the uniform, you'd probably be wise for keeping that killer on your team. But I can also see the world where they don't want to pay him, especially with what they got going on. One of the problems with the Atlanta Hawks over the last several years is that they never win the lottery. They just won it. Lord knows when they're going to win it again. But you love the idea of some of these other pieces, not named Trae Young, on this team growing together. And like I said, like most of the back of this bench is interchangeable. You can move all of that stuff. You can re-sign a bunch of, sign other players in their stead. Some of these guys, they're going to be in other places very soon, in my imagination. But Johnson, Daniels, Risa Shea, Okongwu, you feel great about those guys. You feel absolutely great about those guys. Trae Young, I think they can honestly get away with allowing him to walk. Not walk, but trading him for either reset or a different thing, whatever they want to do. They can move on from Trae Young in a responsible way and feel great about the others that they have, so long as they put the right stuff next to it. And so that's my take on Atlanta. They're in a good spot because they got rid of stuff they needed to get rid of to fix their books a little bit. So this season is not as important. They can just play the season out, see whatever happens, try to make the playoffs, whatever. But that's not nearly as important as just what they did in trade. It just creates space and flexibility. So that's the most important thing for Atlanta, in my opinion. So yeah, that's what's on my mind. Of course, some of these teams, they're not in the playoff picture. Toronto, Philly, Brooklyn, Charlotte, Washington. I think Charlotte and Washington are pretty interesting teams, because if either one of them get a superstar kid, it can vault them into a respectability space. I like what Washington did at the trade deadline for the unit, even though I hated it for those players. Smart and Middleton coming to that team brought a certain seriousness to that unit. Coaches on the floor, some mentors for those young guys, teach them how to win, teach them how to play hard. I like that for this unit. I hate it for those guys, though. Bringing them to that situation is awful. But they seem to be doing well in it. They seem to be handling it pretty well. They're taking on the responsibility of teaching these young guys, and I think they may see it as getting in early on a situation that could potentially be pretty good 2 years, 3 years from now. If they help these kids, they could have a souped-up team. You know what I mean? And they could be the reason why those guys are their best. So there's optimism in Middleton and Smart's situation to finish the season out. This team has been finding ways to compete. They got a great chance of getting a great pick this year and next year. They could infuse themselves with some real good talent and already have a lot of it. Youthful, respectable players are already in place. So that's what I think of Washington. Sarr, George, Carrington, Johnson. I like that five of players. Jordan Poole is just kind of there to give them a little bit of star power, a bad contract that they could afford to take on. Somebody who's going to get better in their uniform, somebody they could likely retrade for more later on. And then whatever they get in the draft here, which is going to undoubtedly be at least a top 5 pick. And I'd imagine they'll tank a little bit next year as these kids continue to grow. So I like what they have. I don't think they suck. And we forgot about the other guy that they picked up last year, I think is out for the season. I can't think of his name, but the wing that they picked up in the draft early on. He's also a part of that. So add his name to that as well, as I forget what it is. But I'll know in a minute. His name is Koulibaly. Yes, he's going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks, rest of the season basically. but he's also part of that, from which I think is a strong, serious bunch of kids that if they grow together 4 or 5 years can, from now, coupled with what they're bringing in over the next 2 years, can make them a very strong playoff team in the future. So I like Washington where they're at. Charlotte is in a weird spot because of the Williams kid in that situation. But he really is a good player. Mark Williams is a really good player. I don't know what they saw, the Lakers saw in his report or whatever. That's kind of a big story for the Hornets situation. But he's gotten back to playing well. Right after that situation went bad, he got back on the floor with the Charlotte Hornets and having double-doubles every night pretty much. So I like him. I'm a big Brandon Miller guy. I do think that the Charlotte Hornets have two of the more promising young killers out there going forward next year. In the future, talk about LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. These are guys where if they have good stuff around them, they can kill you down the stretch of a basketball game. Both of them. They both have killer instinct that is above average, and talent that is well above average. So I think they struck it rich with those two. But if they can't make that place, the culture of the Charlotte Hornets, more respectable, they're going to keep losing games just off of the strength of people not having any confidence wearing the uniform. And I think that's part of the problem, is the perception of the team. They haven't been able to turn the corner into being a respectable team. They tank too much, in my opinion. But I do like the idea that they've been bringing themselves some defensive players. You can clearly see the direction their team is trying to go, trying to bring themselves pick swaps and picks. So it looks like they're heading in the right direction. Unfortunately for them, the Lakers situation went left, so they couldn't get the swap. They couldn't connect. But that showed me that they're trying to turn the corner into the right direction. And so it's a long way. They're a long way away from where they want to be. Because LaMelo Ball's been paid, now the timeline's a little thrown off with him. They're going to have to probably pay Brandon Miller before they're ready to stop tanking as well. So I do think the chances of those kids being elsewhere in the future is pretty high. But I think if all things remain equal, they could potentially be a team that can make a jump at some point. But every year you say that about the Charlotte Hornets, because every year you look on paper, see good talent, but they never turn the corner, man. But I like some of what they have here. Nick Smith is going to turn into something. DiBiase looks like a real promising center. They have a few others. I think a lot of the guys that they have. Williams looks good to me. I like the rookie that they picked up this past year. I think he's going to be a nice big body to score the ball from behind the arc, play a little defense. Tijon Salon. So, this team they have some pieces. Next year they're going to bring back Grant Williams, I'd imagine. Bringing in what's the young guy with the old name that they got from Phoenix? I can't think of his name. But those type of pieces show what type of players they're interested in. Big forwards that can defend some. They got a nice idea about themselves. I think this draft is going to be very important for them. If they can get a top 3 pick, that would be really good for their situation. But how can they turn themselves into a winner, and will they choose to? Williams affects winning for the Hornets. I'm looking at stats of him right now against the Knicks. 19 points, 3 blocks, 4 assists, 14 rebounds, 7 offensive rebounds. He affects winning. So when he's out there, they do find themselves a competitive basketball team. When he's not out there, they don't. What does it look like next year if you bring him back? LaMelo's back, Miller's 100% healthy. Whatever you get out of the draft this year is now in place. Year 2 of DiBiase, year 3 of Nick Smith. What does that look like? Because they start to pile up some respectable talent. And if Williams affects winning the way it looks like he has all season long, next year could be the year where they start turning the corner, maybe win 32 games, something like that. Start the path of going upward and kind of moving away from being a tanking team for once in their lives. But I think a lot of that is organizational, cultural, and the organization is going to have to decide whether they get it, strike it rich in the lottery or not, to turn the corner. Bridges continues to re-sign with them, He doesn't care about their timeline. He's just rolling. That's a free player that wants to be a part of their organization. I say free in the sense that most teams in their situation don't have a Miles Bridges that just keeps re-signing with you no matter how bad you lose, no matter what. He wants to play his career with you, timeline be damned, and he's going to play at a high level on both sides of the floor. They have that going for them as to where other teams in their situations don't, and yet they're still not able to see the fruit and turn in the corner. So it looks like they're ready to start doing things differently. Let's see what they do next. That's really where I'm at with the Charlotte Hornets. They haven't done things all that great, but I'm starting to see glimpses of competence now starting to be a part of the process. So that's my take on the Charlotte Hornets. I think they got some real killers, but they're going to have to make an organizational decision to choose to win. Just like Blazers are doing right now. At some point in time, you just say, we got a bunch of stuff. Let's let these kids win and see what happens. That's what Charlotte needs to choose to do, in my opinion. But I think some of that was probably snatched from them with the Miller injury and the Grant Williams injury. I think that kind of made the decision for them. So it just is what it is. What other team did I not get into in the Eastern Conference? Toronto. Toronto could benefit greatly from winning this lottery as well. Obviously, a Cooper Flag can really help them. But what I see in Toronto is a team that's a bit capped off under where they want to be because of some of the contracts that ultimately are in place. Scotty Barnes, fantastic. He needs to start winning at some point. Emmanuel Quickley is a role player playing a starter's role, paid a starter's amount. I don't love that. Jakob Poeltl needs to be winning. R.J. Barrett is a star-level player getting better every year. He does fantastic things in the scoring and assist category. He's really special. He needs to be winning. So Toronto's a team that if they get the lottery favors in their, if the lottery rolls in their favor, they could find themselves being the Detroit of next year, back in the playoff mix, top 10 next year in the Eastern Conference. But they really do need the right piece to come into place, and they really do need to make a decision with some of these pieces if they don't strike it rich in the lottery and get Cooper Flag. Because some of the stuff on this team is really good, and they could trade it to a winning situation and further reinforce the tank, since they're tanking anyway, but maybe they don't see the fruit in that. Maybe they say, okay, we're one piece away from being a really competent team, so let's keep all this win stuff together and move forward. They were a team that I thought was going to be pretty good to start the season, but the injuries kind of forced them into being a tanking team, sort of like New Orleans in the West. So this is a free year, and given the fact that they had such poor draft circumstances last year, given the fact that their pick got deferred to Spurs in the Pearl trade, which shouldn't have been done in the first place, they had a 20-something pick in a year where they were really bad. So that's like a throwaway year where nothing good came of their badness. This year they got a chance at really doing something with that tank and still having win-now talent in place. So I think they're potentially a quick turnaround team, but some of them contracts I just look at it and say, I'm not in love with the vision. Even if you bring Cooper Flag to you, I'm not in love with the vision to where I expect for you guys to win soon enough to make any of this make any sense. So they're not in no man's land because of the potential of them winning the lottery. We just got to see what happens in that lottery. If they get screwed like Detroit usually does, get a 5th overall pick or something like that, it could potentially be a problem for their franchise. But if they can get the flag, look out. That's a turnaround team immediately. A turnaround team. So that's really what I have to say about the Toronto Raptors. I like some of their pieces. Baji's nice. I didn't know they had Colin Castleton. I didn't even know he was there till right now. I like Jamal Sheed. He's really nice. So, they got some stuff. Mogbo, they did good in the draft with what they had. That's another thing. Mogbo was a good pick. So we'll see. We'll see what Toronto does. But it's all about them getting lucky and getting a top 3 pick. If they can get one of them studs, look out. Toronto's going to be a real team in the future. So I think I ran through the entire Eastern Conference. Let's see. That was my intention, is to kind of just touch on all Eastern Conference squads. I didn't talk about Brooklyn or Philadelphia. Philadelphia, my God, man. My problem with the Philadelphia 76ers is they really have a terrible vision for what the field ultimately is throwing at them. You need athleticism, you need youth, you need speed. I would like to think they learned that lesson after this horrible season and are going to turn their attention to trying to make sure they have some of that. And it looks to me that they may have started the process of doing that. I like Yabusele. Justin Edwards has been a good rookie for them. Quentin Grimes looked like he's going to be a stud going forward. Jalen Hood-Schifino, I still think, has a nice upside. Ricky Council, I've listened to people talk about Ricky Council. It's kind of iffy with him. Adam Bona, I like him a lot out of UCLA. So some of these young guys that they got, Yabusele's nice. They're nice pieces. And that's what they need to build upon. If they can move Paul George, that should be priority number one. If they can move... if they can actually move Joel Embiid, that should be priority number two, in my opinion. I don't believe that Joel Embiid should be invested in anymore by the Philadelphia 76ers. I think this should be the end of that. Hopefully, for their sake, he doesn't have to be forcefully retired. But if there's any chance they can retain any value for that particular piece and stop having to pay for it, they need to do that now. They need to do that now. That should be priority number one. The future is in the youth and the speed surrounding Tyrese Maxey and, of course, the young fella that's out for the season, the rookie that likely would have been rookie of the year if he could have just played all year long. His name is... what's that kid name? Jared McCain. Complete and utter stud. We know Jared McCain's a stud. He was able to show us throughout the course of the first half of the season he's an absolute stud. So you hold on to him, you hold on to Maxey. You got to move George. You got to move Embiid. Even if it means you're not getting great returns for them, you just got to stop paying these people. It's less about resetting your situation with draft picks and stuff like that, and it's more about getting those awful albatross win-now contracts the hell out of Philadelphia. ASAP. It needs to be done, man. I'm moving Joel Embiid, even if it doesn't get me the greatest return. Just get him out of here. Addition by subtraction, getting that contract off my books. Paul George contract, arguably the worst in all of basketball. Get him the hell out of here right away. Move that piece. Kelly Oubre, it doesn't really matter to me. I don't know what his contract is. He's a nice piece. Tends to be a nice guy on the floor for athleticism and defensive prowess. From what I understand, his basketball IQ isn't that great. I haven't watched enough of him to know that closely. But if he's a bad contract, I'm getting him the hell out of here. If he's a decent contract, I'll hold on to him. For their sake, hopefully they can keep their pick. I understand that, there's a lot of things riding on that. This could potentially be a Toronto-type situation like last year where they end up with like a bad pick for a bad year. If their pick actually gets deferred to another team, for which it could. I think OKC or something, I'm not really sure. But if that happens, it's terrible for them. But like I said, I don't particularly think the most important thing for them is to try to build through the draft this season. The most important thing for them is to get those two awful contracts the hell out of Philadelphia. Then we can start talking about future seasons. How you're going to build around McCain and Maxey. And how much of the stuff that you have right now can potentially be a part of that. Quentin Grimes, if he's going to turn into a star, then he's a part of that. That's the triple right there. You don't have to win too much next year. You don't care about that. Just have those guys getting better. Hopefully Maxey can deal with this process of not being on a winning team while getting all the money in the world, because that's exactly what it's going to be. Like I said, McCain is a stud, so I'm not worried about his running mate. Keep the young stuff. Move the hell on from Joel, George, and Nurse. The coach got to go. Get Nurse out of there. Get him out of there. Fire him. He's been awful all season long. His vision for this team has not been any good all year long. He must be fired. 3 people got to go out of Philadelphia, and maybe 4 if you're considering Daryl Morey. If I'm the owner, I'm probably moving on from Morey. Brought me all this bad trash. I'm moving on from Nurse, who hasn't had a clue all season long. And I'm moving on from Joel and Paul because those contracts are terrible. So that's what I think of the 76ers. And last but not least, I think of the Brooklyn Nets. They did the right thing. I got on the Brooklyn Nets 2 years ago at length for their vision for win now talent without actually bringing themselves any picks to be any flexible at all. They traded away all their stars for more of the same. I thought they were awful for that. They finally came around to understanding what they needed to do. They got Ben Simmons out of there at this point. He's coming off. He's in LA. That's off the books. That's great for them. They got past the whole era of all them superstars, stuff like that. The triple, big three garbage that didn't win nothing. They got all that out of here. They went back and got their picks, which I thought was absolutely stellar for their future. They went back and got their very own picks, and now they get to tank and see whatever comes of their situation. That's all I ever asked of the Brooklyn Nets. Have clean books, value your future in regards to building through the draft, and start the process of doing so. So they need to bottom out from here, in my opinion. Bottom all the way out. You need to be doing what Washington's doing. If you get Cooper the Flag, you tank next year too. If you get Ace Bailey, you tank next year too. But you make sure you have your picks in your pocket, building through the draft, homegrown Brooklyn Nets talent to finally start the process of what a actual Brooklyn Nets team is supposed to look like. Because you keep on trying to skip those steps, bringing yourself other people's stars, trying to make it so that you have something big going on, and you're never actually building a Brooklyn Nets culture. You moved the team to Brooklyn, and you never built the culture. Meanwhile, all the stuff that you otherwise would have built the culture with is going off winning elsewhere. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum both should have been Brooklyn Nets lifers. You see what I'm saying? So it's like they kept trying to cheat the game, just like Phoenix does in the West. And because of it, they end up with the same results that Phoenix did. Phoenix should have been learning from them, actually. But they didn't. And so they're finally doing things correctly. Nothing on their team right now necessarily has to stay. None of it really has upside that makes you excited. Some of these guys are going to be cool role players all over the country. But nothing here has to stay. Nothing has to stay. They just need to get Cooper Flag or Ace Bailey or somebody like that. Hopefully they get lucky in the draft. Keep as much of that stuff to tank with next year. Cam Johnson's cool. Probably going to move him at some point. Claxton's cool. Probably going to move him at some point. Some of these other guys are career role players. Cam Thomas, probably move him eventually. D'Lo, doesn't matter. I mean, you could just do whatever with most of this stuff. Some of these guys be role players on your team when you have what you need. But that's really all I see is a bunch of role players who hopefully they can build up some culture. Maybe one or two of these guys break out in some way. But the roster in place right now probably won't. None of these people will probably be here 2 years from now, 3 years from now. That's what I see with Brooklyn. It's an entire clean slate, no bad contracts. The New York market, their own pick finally back in place. They're in a great spot. Now it's just time to lose basketball games and see what you got. Invest in your development, and finally establish an actual Brooklyn Nets culture for the very first time. That's literally it. So that concludes, I think, all of the teams at this point. I ain't said about everything in the Eastern Conference. That was my intention. Let's go through the East. We often focus on the West since I'm a Laker fan, so it ain't much to do that. But I wanted to go through the East up and down, look at each and every one of these teams, and just talk about them a little bit. So it's been an hour. Hopefully the machines are available for me to wash. My food's getting cold, but I don't care. I wanted to get this video out, and I thank you guys for allowing me to do so. My name is BDL44. I thank you all for watching. I'm out.